Hello and welcome to Another Day, Another Evil. I'm your host Melissa.
And I'm Gina.
It's my turn this week to make your brain itchy. As always, there may be some information that is not suitable for all listeners, so discretion is advised. It was a quiet Sunday evening in a seaside town. There was a knock at the door by a man who simply didn't exist, which resulted in a murder that nearly 22 years later is still cold. And unfortunately, I can't seem to find much on Alistair Wilson's background. He was born in 1974 in Beath, a town in North Ayrshire, Scotland, around 20 miles southwest of Glasgow. After attending Beath Primary and Garnock Academy, he studied accountancy and business law at Stirling University before joining the Bank of Scotland and marrying German-born Veronica, a graphic designer. He relocated to Nairn, a coastal town in Scotland around 170 miles north of Glasgow, with his wife and 2 children, where he was a business manager of a local Bank of Scotland branch. On the 28th of November 2004, Alistair was getting his 2 young sons ready for bed upstairs when the doorbell rang at around 7 p.m. Veronica, his wife, answered the door and was met by a clean-shaven, stocky man in his 30s, wearing a dark bomber-style jacket and baseball hat. He asked for Alistair by name and waited patiently for him to come to the door. The stranger handed Alistair an empty blue envelope with the name Paul written on the front before Alistair returned inside and went upstairs to speak briefly with his wife. She noticed he was visibly perplexed, and then he returned to speak with the man. Moments later, 3 gunshots rang out. His wife ran to the Havelock Hotel nearby for help. Alistair had been shot twice in the head and once in the body before he was rushed to hospital, and unfortunately he died there and left a widow and 2 young sons behind. In April 2005, Alistair Wilson's funeral service was held at St Andrew's Episcopal Church in Fort William, following the private memorial service which had taken place in Nairn in December of 2004. Around 250 people attended the service, led by Reverend Norman McCallum, where he stated, quote, "We are thanking God for Alistair's life. Short though it was, nothing can take that away from the family." His close friends and family reminisced over Alistair's, quote, "heart of gold," and all of the great times that they shared. Following his death, an investigation took place. However, it didn't really seem to bring up much in the way of solving the case. It wasn't until later that year, in December 2004, that the murder weapon was found by council workmen clearing gullies just a street away. And now this is where the case takes a turn. It was a 1920s Heinel Schmeiser semi-automatic pistol. And for those of you, like me, who aren't gun fanatics, and I probably pronounced that wrong, it's an antique German pocket pistol. No DNA was ever retrieved from the weapon. In January of 2006, senior detectives travelled to Germany and the Czech Republic to try and trace the history of the gun and the ammunition used. However, there was no use, and in 2013, the police released a new image of the gun, with Detective Superintendent Stewart saying, quote, "The weapon is a significant age, so piecing together its history could very well help provide us with some new leads." It was further stated that, quote, "The ammunition was a .25 caliber made by Sellier and Belot in the Czech Republic between 1983 and 1999. And again, I'm sorry about my pronunciation. Veronica, Alistair's wife, spoke out in November of 2017, saying, quote, "It would mean the world to us to have Alistair's killer brought to justice," with Andrew, their eldest son, speaking to the BBC for the first time in October of 2020. And in March of 2022, detectives travelled to Nova Scotia, Canada, as part of their inquiries. Following this, it was released in April that the police believe the answers to the murder of Alistair were within his personal life, with no suspicions around his employment with the bank. And we'll come back to this when we speak about the theories behind Alistair's murder. In May 2022, detectives appealed for any further information following a witness reporting seeing two men, one in their 20s carrying a gun and another between 40 and 60 on the beach a month before Alistair's murder. It was at this time a slight change in the description of the man who shot Alistair was also made. Detectives believed he was aged between 20 and 40 years old at the time. He was approximately 5'7" and was wearing a baseball cap and jacket. It wasn't until December 2023, just past the 19-year anniversary, that the family of Alistair made a complaint regarding the handling of the investigation. Which I think is kind of understandable, because from my research, nothing had really come up. They spoke out the following year, stating that although they had previously agreed that they would stay out of the media spotlight, they, quote, over the past 18 months, the relationship with the police had steadily deteriorated because of the unresolved and ongoing issues that are not being properly addressed. And nearly 20 years on, in September of 2024, Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain KC reordered a complete reinvestigation into the murder. A team of 14 plus officers were working on reinvestigating the murder as an opportunity for fresh lines of inquiry. Around 10,000 documents, including approximately 6,000 statements, were being re-examined. The following year, Chief Superintendent Suzanne Chow, leading the investigation, said that, quote, we have a team of 37 officers and staff dedicated to this investigation who have already carried out a significant amount of work. So, that concludes the investigation up until now. Nothing's really come up. We don't have information about the envelope. We don't have information about the potential murderer, other than the description, which, if you ask me, is pretty vague. There's no sketch, there's no nothing. We have an image of the gun that has been released, but no sort of idea on when or where it came about, who owned it. And I think that it's interesting that nothing has really been released. So it goes on to the theories of what happened, which, with not much information, kind of can be pretty wild. So early on in the investigation, the theory of mistaken identity was really popular, which obviously with the envelope it can kind of be understood why. However, if you remember, Veronica was certain that the man asked for Alistair Wilson by name. So surely that kind of rules out the mistaken identity. One of the theories that has come up following the appeals from the police that he was killed in relation to a local planning application. So, according to the information gained, Alistair objected to a large decking area outside of the Havelock Hotel opposite his home. The detective, who travelled to Canada in 2022, went to interview a key witness regarding this application. Detective Superintendent Graham Mackey stated that, quote, whilst we cannot rule out any scenario, we believe this could be significant to our inquiries. And whilst Alistair didn't disclose his objections to many people, he formally submitted this to the local authority, which was sent to the hotel the Thursday before his murder, and was made public on the Sunday, which was the day of, which obviously could be significant. But I think that the theory that he was murdered in relation to a planning dispute seems unlikely. However, we have seen people killed for less. So what are your thoughts, Melissa?
I was literally just thinking, it seems a bit extreme, and then my other thought was, but people kill for less. And you've said that, so yeah. I hope it's not that. I hope he wasn't killed for something so ridiculous. But if it's to be gunned down in your house in a country that has stricter gun laws and we don't have access to, perhaps that is actually quite realistic if the hotel has something to do with like the underworld, like, and it's planning permission for something dodgy. I mean, money laundering, drugs, could be anything. But in that scenario, that could work. But obviously a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
It does feel like a bit of a stretch, but then people do get killed for stupider things.
Yeah. A former leading police officer argued that Alistair's murder is much more likely to be found in his business dealings rather than a row over planning permission, which I guess seems more plausible, yet still lacking in evidence. Whether that was over personal or work-related, we currently don't know. So, obviously, we know that he worked in a bank and therefore it could have been linked to something a bit more nefarious without his wife knowing. Any associates would obviously have liked to keep that quiet. So, it is plausible, but like any other theory, which could be plausible, without any evidence, we can't really go much further than that. Police Detective Colin Sutton, who led to the investigation that led to the conviction of serial killer Levi Belfield, also argued that Alistair's murder was more likely to have been a professional assassination over some sort of neighbourhood disagreement, pointing to the weapon which was used.
Oh, that's what I said, because it was a gun and you can't get hold of guns.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have been out there catching serial killers.
You could have been Colin Sutton.
Yeah.
And at the end of 2022, the police were interested in a specific person previously not associated with the case. The man in question was a regular at the hotel and was known to have kept guns at his property. His name has not been released in any of the media around this for obvious reasons, and that kind of is where that bit goes cold. But in June of 2023, a potential suspect was arrested in connection with the supply of drugs, and I assume that it's the same person, but I couldn't find any corroborating evidence or anything to suggest that they were different or the same. I'm just assuming, since they've only kind of said that there's one suspect, that it is that one. And I wonder whether that could be a better link, and if this is the man who killed Alistair, could it be to do with drugs or something more elaborate? And I think it's odd, don't you, that the empty envelope with Paul's name on led Alistair to return inside and then go back out only moments later to be shot. I really think that that's strange. Surely the name Paul must have meant something to Alistair for him to return outside. Or I've also seen in theories that he could have just gone inside to read the name, realised it was wrong, so went to return it. Regardless, we're not actually sure whether the envelope was ever retrieved, so we don't exactly know what it looks like, whether there was actually anything inside it. We just had the testimony of his wife who briefly saw it. And all we know is that the envelope was handed to Alistair. He returned inside to Veronica, who, when she saw it, was empty. So it's not impossible that it did have something inside it beforehand. Or I've also seen that the envelope was kind of given to him for him to put stuff in it to then give to this Paul character. Again, I don't know. There's not anything else on it. There's just all of these theories that are wild and based on information that is lacking. And in my investigation and research and deep dives into the theories and Reddit holes, which does have its place within amateur sleuthing, I saw that Alistair had actually quit his job at the bank to start his own business venture, and that he owed somebody a significant amount of money because of this, which obviously could have been like the loan or whatever. I couldn't really find or confirm legitimacy of this. I just saw it in the theories, but I think it's key to note that it could be something that is significant here. And again, we could end up down an absolute rabbit hole of theories that have come up within the 20-year investigation, but none of these theories have been substantiated, so I don't want to take too much away from the fact that a man was killed and left a widow and two sons behind. So, As of May 2026, Police Scotland's dedicated team is still sifting through the digital ghosts of 14,000 recorded actions and 6,000 witness statements. Today, the house on Crescent Road is still a reminder of a shadow that hasn't been lifted for the people of Nairn. And despite this passage of 2 decades, the forensic advancements of 2026, including if they have the envelope, enhanced DNA recovery from that, and any DNA recovery from the antique pistol, offer the best hope yet for a breakthrough. And the detectives and us here at Another Day, Another Evil urge all of those with information, no matter how big or how small, to either call Police Scotland on 101 or Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. And thank you for listening to the unsolved case of the murder of Alistair Wilson. Be sure to join us next week. Stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Another Day, Another Evil.
This show was written and hosted by Melissa and Georgina Scorer.
All of our sources can be found in the show notes.
Stay safe. Goodbye.